The sky was painted in shades of twilight as the alien envoy descended onto Earth for the first time. The sleek silver vessel shimmered like a jewel in the heavens, its design unlike anything humans had ever seen. Crowds gathered in awe, their whispers a mixture of fear and wonder. The world held its breath as the ramp lowered with a soft hum, and Princess Velar of Zinthra stepped into the open air. Velar was breathtaking. Her silvery blue skin seemed to glow softly under the Earth's sun, and her eyes, an iridescent blend of violet and gold, sparkled with curiosity. Draped in flowing fabrics that shifted colors like the ocean, she was regal yet approachable. Beside her stood 2 Zinthran guards, their tall frames imposing yet respectful. The Earth officials greeted her warmly, but Velar's attention was drawn elsewhere. The vibrant sounds of human life, the rustling leaves, distant laughter, and the hum of vehicles, captivated her. On Zinthra, nature was silent, a quiet balance carefully maintained. Earth, by contrast, was chaotic, alive, and unpredictable. It thrilled her. Among the crowd, a man stood out, his gaze fixed on Velar. He wasn't dressed like the officials or the scientists. He blended in too well with the ordinary humans. Yet his posture, confident and steady, suggested he was no ordinary bystander. When Velar's gaze briefly met his, he quickly turned away, disappearing into the throng. Velar's first day on Earth was a whirlwind. She was introduced to diplomats, scientists, and cultural leaders, all eager to impress her. Yet, despite their efforts, her thoughts kept drifting back to the stranger in the crowd. Something about him felt different. The next morning, she insisted on a private tour of the human city. "If I am to understand Earth, I must experience it as its people do," she declared, her melodic voice firm yet kind. The officials hesitated but eventually agreed, assigning Marin, a reserved yet capable human guide, to escort her. Marin was polite and efficient, but his guarded demeanor made it hard for Velar to read him. Despite this, she found herself intrigued by his quiet strength. As they wandered through bustling markets and serene parks, Velar marveled at the diversity of human life. Children laughed as they chased bubbles, elders shared stories over steaming cups of tea, and street performers brought music to the air. It was a kaleidoscope of emotions and experiences, so unlike the measured harmony of Zinthra. But the peaceful day took a sudden turn. A nearby bridge, weakened by years of neglect, began to collapse. Screams erupted as people scrambled to safety, but a child was trapped near the edge. Without hesitation, Velar ran towards the danger, her guards shouting in alarm. Before she could reach the child, a figure darted past her, a man in a hooded jacket. He moved with the precision of a predator, leaping over debris and reaching the child just as the bridge gave way. Holding the child tightly, he somersaulted to safety, landing with a grace that left the crowd stunned. Velar froze. It was the man from the crowd. She approached him, her heart pounding. "Who are you?" she asked softly. The man set the child down, ruffled the boy's hair, and turned to Velar. His face was partially obscured by a scarf, but his piercing green eyes met hers for a fleeting moment. "Just someone passing through," he said, his voice calm and steady. Before she could ask more, he disappeared into the crowd, leaving Velar with more questions than answers. Back at the embassy that evening, Velar couldn't shake the memory of her mysterious rescuer. His courage, his skill, the way he had risked everything for a stranger, it was unlike anything she had encountered on Zinthra. Her hand instinctively brushed against the pendant she wore, a symbol of unity between their worlds. For the first time, she wondered if the connection she sought wasn't just political but something far more personal. Velar vowed to uncover the identity of the man who had saved the child, and left her heart racing. The days following the bridge incident were filled with diplomatic meetings, press conferences, and endless streams of discussions about the new alliance between Earth and Zinthra. Yet, for Princess Velar, the noise of Earth's politics felt distant. Her thoughts often drifted back to the man she had seen that fateful day. His face was a blur, but his actions were clear in her mind, his bravery, his compassion, and the strange warmth she felt when their gazes met. Velar knew that she was an emissary, here to foster peace and build bridges between two very different worlds. But deep inside, she felt a pull she couldn't explain, one that drew her toward this mysterious human. She had encountered many humans in her short time on Earth, but none like him. He was different. His essence was both familiar and foreign, like a piece of her own story that she had yet to discover. The following week, Velar requested a personal tour of a human settlement, one of the many bustling cities that stretched across the globe. Earth's cities were like living organisms, constantly evolving and shifting. And she wanted to experience them firsthand, to understand them better. Marin, her human guide, had been assigned to accompany her on this journey. He was reliable, knowledgeable, and attentive, but there was a coldness to him, a wall he kept firmly in place, keeping the world at arm's length. Wheeler couldn't help but wonder what lay beneath that stoic exterior. He was a man of few words, yet his actions spoke volumes. He had a quiet strength about him that was undeniable. As they walked through the vibrant streets, Wheeler felt the pulse of Earth's life force, a constant hum of energy. The air smelled of spices and flowers, and the sounds of laughter, chatter, and music filled the atmosphere. Children ran by with bright smiles, elders sat under the shade of trees, sharing stories of days long gone, and the aroma of freshly baked bread filled the air. Wheeler marveled at the simplicity and complexity of Earth all at once. But as they moved through the crowds, Wheeler couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She often turned her gaze to the corners of the streets, as if expecting the mysterious man to appear once more. There was something about him that called to her, a sense of familiarity, like they had crossed paths before in another life, in another place. "Princess, is there something on your mind?" Marin's voice broke through her thoughts. His tone was neutral, but Wheeler could hear the hint of concern hidden beneath the surface. Wheeler blinked, bringing herself back to the present. "No, it's nothing," she said quickly, offering him a small smile. "It's just... Earth is so different from Zinthra. It's vibrant, full of life. I feel... overwhelmed." Marin nodded, his eyes softening for the briefest moment. "I understand. Earth can be a lot to take in at first. But you'll get used to it." Wheeler watched him carefully, noticing the way his jaw tightened slightly when he spoke. There was something unspoken between them, a quiet tension that neither dared address. For all the words they exchanged, there was a vast expanse of silence that lay just beneath the surface, a silence that was filled with unasked questions and unspoken truths. They continued their walk, moving past a small park where children played and couples strolled hand in hand. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the scene. Wheeler felt a strange pang in her chest, a longing she couldn't quite explain. "I wonder," she said softly, "what it would be like to live among the people of Earth without the weight of duty on my shoulders. To walk without the title of Princess Wheeler. To simply be Wheeler." Marin glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "I think that's a dream for many, Princess. But not everyone can have that freedom." Wheeler stopped, her eyes meeting his. For the first time, she allowed herself to truly study him. His face was sharp, with strong features, dark eyes that had seen much, yet held an air of quiet mystery. His hair, the color of dark wood, fell just above his shoulders, and his hands, calloused from work, were steady as they rested by his sides. "I think you could," she said quietly, almost as a whisper. "You seem like someone who knows how to navigate this world without being swallowed by it." Marin blinked, clearly caught off guard by her words. His eyes softened, but he quickly looked away, as if to hide the vulnerability that flickered in them. "Everyone has their burdens to carry, Princess." Wheeler's heart stirred at his words. There was something about the way he spoke, something that suggested he had been through trials of his own. She was curious, but she knew better than to push too hard. He would reveal his story when he was ready. And yet, as they continued their journey through the city, Wheeler couldn't shake the feeling that their fates were intertwined somehow. That there was something more to their connection than mere coincidence. As the day wore on, the mood shifted. A sudden burst of chaos erupted in the marketplace ahead. Screams echoed through the air, and people scattered in panic as a group of masked individuals appeared, brandishing weapons. Their faces were hidden, but their intentions were clear. They were there to cause harm. Without a moment's hesitation, Marin moved to shield Wheeler. "Stay back," he ordered, his voice low but firm. Wheeler's heart raced. She had not expected this. The violence, the chaos, it was unlike anything she had seen in her peaceful world of Zinthra. But before she could react, a figure darted past them, moving with the precision and grace of someone who had seen battle. It was the same man who had saved the child on the bridge. He moved through the chaos with ease, disarming the attackers with fluid motions, his eyes locked on his targets. There was no hesitation, no fear. Just pure, focused determination. Veeler watched, mesmerized, as the man defeated the assailants with swift precision. She could hardly believe her eyes. The hero she had been seeking was standing right before her. Marin turned to her, his eyes wide with shock. Who is that? Veeler didn't answer. She couldn't. All she could do was watch as the man, her rescuer, fought to protect them. And in that moment, she realized, her connection to this man was no accident. They were meant to cross paths. But the question lingered, who was he? And why had he chosen to protect her? The battle in the marketplace had ended as quickly as it began. The masked assailants were neutralized with alarming speed, and the crowd slowly began to gather, whispering about the mysterious figure who had saved them. As the chaos settled, the man who had stepped into the fray, her rescuer, vanished into the shadows, his purpose served. Veeler stood still, her heart beating in her chest. There was something electric in the air, a crackling sensation that spoke of something larger than what her eyes could see. The man, the one who had appeared when she least expected it, was not merely a defender. He was someone who moved like a force of nature, always just out of reach but never fully disappearing. She had caught glimpses of his actions, but his identity remained an enigma. Marin, ever watchful, turned to her. His face was set in grim determination, though there was a flicker of something deeper in his gaze. "Are you all right, Princess?" he asked, his voice steady but tinged with concern. Veeler nodded, though her mind was elsewhere. "I'm fine." But, she hesitated, looking towards the street where the man had disappeared. "Who was that?" Marin's jaw tightened. "I don't know. I've never seen him before." Veeler didn't believe him. She could sense it. There was something more to Marin's response than simple confusion. He knew something. Her instincts, honed over years of diplomatic negotiations, told her that there was a hidden truth here. Marin, her guide and protector, was hiding something. But what? Over the next few days, Veeler's thoughts were consumed by the mysterious man and the secrets that seemed to swirl around him. Marin's stoic demeanor did little to calm her growing curiosity. She had come to trust him during their time together, but this new layer of mystery made her question everything. Why had he reacted the way he had when the man appeared? Why had he been so quick to shield her from the danger, even though the attacker had been swiftly dealt with? That evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, Veeler found herself wandering alone through the city's quiet streets. It was rare for her to have moments of solitude, but she craved the peace that came with walking among the humans without the weight of royal duty. The world around her seemed to hum with life, the distant laughter of children playing, the soft murmur of a conversation in a nearby cafe. Earth was beautiful in its own way, chaotic yet full of wonder. Her footsteps echoed in the empty alleyway, and as she turned a corner, she froze. There, standing in the shadows, was the man. The same man who had saved her, and the same man who had disappeared without a trace. Veeler's breath caught in her throat. This time, she didn't hesitate. Her curiosity had long since outweighed any fear, and she stepped forward into the dim light. "It's you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The man didn't flinch. His face was still hidden behind a mask, but his eyes, those striking green eyes, met hers with a gaze that sent a chill through her. He was watching her, studying her, as if he were unsure of whether to reveal himself. "I could ask the same of you, Princess Veeler," he said, his voice low and smooth, carrying an edge of mystery. "What are you doing here alone?" Veeler stood tall, unafraid. "I could ask the same of you. Why do you keep hiding from me? You've saved me twice now, and yet you vanish without a word." The man tilted his head slightly, as if considering her words. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," he replied quietly. "I believe in the goodness of humans," Veeler said, taking a step closer. "And in your actions. But I don't understand why you keep hiding. Why don't you show me who you truly are?" There was a long pause. The man's eyes softened for the briefest moment, but then his mask of indifference returned. "I can't." "Not yet," he said, his voice tinged with a quiet sadness. "There's more at play here than you realize. My identity, it's dangerous, Princess. For you. For me. For everyone." Veeler took another step, her gaze never leaving his. "Then let me help. Whatever it is, we can face it together." Earth and Zinthra are supposed to be united, aren't they? Perhaps your secret is a part of that unity. The man remained silent, his eyes searching hers as if trying to gauge her sincerity. After what felt like an eternity, he sighed, as if resigning to something deep within himself. Maybe you're right, he said softly. But you'll need to be prepared. The truth, it could change everything. Velar's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't fully understand the gravity of his words, but she could sense the weight of them. She had no idea what kind of secret the man was hiding, but she knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about diplomacy. It wasn't just about Zinthra and Earth. This was something personal. Something that intertwined their fates in ways she had yet to comprehend. Tell me, Velar urged, her voice barely above a whisper. Tell me the truth. Who are you really? For a moment, the man hesitated. But then, with a swift movement, he reached up and pulled the mask from his face. Velar's breath caught in her throat as she looked into the face of the man who had saved her twice, the face of the one she had been searching for, without even knowing it. It was Marin. Her mind raced, her heart thundering in her chest. The man who had guided her, who had stood by her side through countless challenges, was the very person she had been seeking. Marin, no, Drennan, was the vigilante, the hero she had come to admire, to trust, to... Her voice faltered as the pieces fell into place. Why didn't you tell me? Drennan's expression was filled with both pain and resolve. Because, Princess, I had to protect you. There are forces out there who would do anything to use my identity against you, against Earth and Zinthra. The silence between Velar and Drennan stretched long, each second thick with unspoken emotions and new realizations. Velar's mind raced as she tried to comprehend what had just unfolded. The man she had trusted, the one who had guided her through Earth's mysteries, the one she had felt a connection to, was the same man who had saved her life not once, but twice. He wasn't just her guide, he wasn't just a simple human, he was the mysterious vigilante, the hero who had become a shadow in the hearts of the people. And yet, despite the shock, there was something undeniable in her heart, a stirring of something deeper. Love, perhaps. Drennan lowered his gaze, his hand gripping the mask in his hand tightly as if it were the only thing keeping him grounded. His expression was guarded, as if he feared the impact of what he had just revealed. I never wanted to deceive you, he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of years of secrets. But revealing the truth, it would have put you in danger. I needed you to believe in me as Marin, the guide, the ally. If you had known who I really was, if you had known about my past, I couldn't have kept you safe. Velar took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The world felt like it was spinning, but the one thing that remained constant was her feelings for him. She had spent days with Marin, and in that time, a connection had grown between them. She had come to trust him, to admire him, and now she knew him for who he truly was. But that knowledge didn't make her fear him, it made her want to understand him more. I don't fear you, she said softly, her voice unwavering. But I need you to tell me everything. I need to understand why you've chosen to live this double life, why you've kept your identity hidden, and why you were willing to risk everything for me. Drennan's eyes flickered with something, perhaps guilt, perhaps regret, but he nodded slowly, the weight of his past catching up with him. It's a long story, Velar. And it's not just about me. It's about the forces that would see this alliance fail, forces that would do anything to destroy everything we're trying to build. Velar's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? What kind of forces are we talking about? He stepped closer, his eyes intense, his voice low. There are rogue factions on both Earth and Zinthra who believe that the alliance between our worlds is a mistake. They want to maintain control, to keep Earth isolated, to keep Zinthra from having any power here. My identity, what I do as Drennan, is a way to fight back against them, to protect those who can't protect themselves. But it's not just about saving people. There's a greater war at play. Velar swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. And you've been fighting this war alone? Not alone, he corrected, his gaze softening. I've had allies. But I've been keeping my distance. There's too much at stake. If the wrong person found out about me, about what I've been doing, everything would fall apart. Velar stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. But you didn't tell me, Drennan. You kept me in the dark. You hid who you really were from me. Why? Drennan's jaw clenched. Because I couldn't risk you getting involved. This isn't just a fight for Earth or Zinthra, it's a fight for the future. If I let myself get too close to you, if I let my feelings for you grow, it would put you in danger. I couldn't bear that. His words were like a dagger to her heart. The thought that he had been keeping her at arm's length, pushing her away to protect her, made her feel a mix of emotions, sadness, confusion, and a strange sense of longing. She had trusted him, and yet he had kept her in the dark. She had been right to feel there was more to their bond, but she hadn't known it would come with such heavy consequences. "Drennan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You should have told me. I would have understood. I would have fought by your side." He shook his head, his eyes filled with regret. "No, Velar. You deserve more than this. You deserve to live a life free from the shadows. A life of peace, where you don't have to worry about who's trying to destroy everything you hold dear. I didn't want you to get tangled in this mess." She took a step closer to him, her hand reaching out to gently touch his arm. "But I'm already tangled, Drennan. Whether you want me to be or not, I'm already part of your world. And I won't leave you alone in this fight." Drennan's eyes widened slightly, the rawness of her words cutting through his defenses. "Velar, But before he could finish, a sudden explosion shook the ground beneath them. The air was thick with the sound of destruction, and the faint echoes of screams reached their ears. Velar's heart raced. "What's happening?" Drennan's face hardened in an instant, his protective instincts kicking in. "It's them. They've come for you. We need to move now." The world outside the alleyway had erupted into chaos. Armed figures in dark clothing stormed through the streets, weapons raised, their faces obscured by masks. The rogue factions Drennan had warned about had arrived, and they had a clear target, Princess Velar. Drennan's hand gripped Velar's firmly, pulling her toward the nearest alley as the sound of gunfire echoed in the distance. "Stay close to me," he urged, his voice low and urgent. "We need to get you to safety." But Velar was no longer the helpless princess she had once been. She had learned Earth's ways, understood its complexities, and now, standing by Drennan's side, she felt a fire burn inside her. She had spent so much time hiding behind her title, behind her position as a princess. But now, the time had come to stand up and fight. "I'm not going anywhere without you," she said, her voice fierce with resolve. Drennan's eyes softened, but the urgency in his gaze didn't waver. "We don't have time for this, Velar. You're not safe here. I need you to trust me." But Velar stood firm. "I trust you more than you know." Drennan hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Then stay close, and follow my lead." They moved through the shadows, weaving between the streets, evading the enemy with practiced ease. But Velar could sense the growing tension in Drennan's body. He was fighting not only for her life, but for everything they had fought for, the fragile peace between Zinthra and Earth, the hope that their worlds could coexist. And as they ran, side by side, Velar realized that this was just the beginning. Their fates were no longer separate. They were bound together, by love, by duty, and by the dangerous road that lay ahead. The air around them was thick with tension as Drennan and Velar sprinted through the darkened streets. The sounds of chaos, of gunfire and shouting, echoed in the distance, growing closer with each passing second. Velar's heart hammered in her chest, not just from the fear of the attack, but from the realization that her world, both her life as a princess and her unexpected connection to Drennan, had changed in an instant. Her breath came in short gasps as they turned down a narrow alleyway, the shadowy figures of their enemies still chasing them. Drennan's grip on her hand was firm, guiding her with a sense of urgency, yet there was an undeniable gentleness in his touch that made her feel safe in the midst of the storm. She had never felt so alive, so connected to someone, as she did right now. "Keep moving." Drennan's voice was low but fierce, filled with authority and fear in equal measure. Velar nodded, her resolve hardening with each step. She had seen the horrors of war from afar, had studied the political intricacies of peace-building. But this was real. This was the battle that would determine not just her fate, but the future of both Earth and Zinthra. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Drennan's eyes flickered to hers, a moment of vulnerability slipping through the cracks of his tough exterior. "To the safe house. I know a place where we can hide for now. But we need to move fast." The adrenaline pulsed through Velar's veins, sharpening her senses. She had been prepared for many things since arriving on Earth, but nothing could have prepared her for this, the terror, the rawness of it. She had been trained for diplomacy, for negotiation, for peace. But standing next to Drennan, running from danger, she felt a fire inside her that made her wonder if perhaps she was capable of more than she had ever believed. They turned another corner, and Velar caught a glimpse of something that made her stop dead in her tracks. Familiar faces. Figures in dark clothing stood waiting ahead, blocking their path. Ambush! Drennan hissed, his grip on her tightening. Velar's mind raced. They were surrounded, and the safe house, the one place they could hide, was suddenly out of reach. The enemies were closing in from every side. There was no way to outrun them, no way to fight them off with the few resources they had. But then, just as the tension in the air reached its peak, a new figure emerged from the shadows. A woman, tall and commanding, with a look of fierce determination in her eyes. She was dressed in a sleek, dark suit with the markings of the resistance on her shoulder. Drennan, the woman called, her voice a low, sharp command. "You're not alone." Drennan's eyes narrowed as he recognized the woman. "Ryla," he muttered, his voice a mixture of relief and wariness. "What are you doing here?" "I've got your back," Ryla said, stepping forward and drawing a weapon from her side. "But we don't have much time. These guys are more organized than we thought." The tension between Drennan and Ryla was palpable, like two old friends who had fought side by side for years, yet whose history was filled with unsaid words. Velar could feel the connection between them, a bond forged in the fires of countless battles. But now was not the time for questions. Now, they had to fight to survive. "Move," Ryla ordered, raising her weapon and firing a precise shot at one of the approaching enemies. The blast echoed in the narrow alley, sending the enemy into disarray. Velar barely had time to react as Drennan pulled her into motion once again. They rushed forward, their path now clear as the figures scattered in confusion. Drennan's movements were fluid, effortless, as if he were made for moments like these. And yet, Velar couldn't help but notice the weariness in his eyes, the toll that years of battle had taken on him. As they ran, Velar's thoughts raced. This was no longer just about the alliance between Earth and Zinthra. It was about survival, about protecting what they had built and the love that had slowly grown between them. She didn't know where this path would lead, but she knew one thing for certain: she wasn't going to lose him. Not now, not ever. They finally reached a hidden passage, a narrow door that opened into a small, dimly lit room. Ryla was right behind them, her eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger. The air inside was heavy with the scent of old wood and dust, and the silence was almost suffocating. For a moment, the world outside seemed to fade away. They were safe, at least for now. Drennan collapsed against the wall, taking a deep breath. His eyes met Velar's, and for the first time since their escape, there was a flicker of something softer in his gaze. "You're safe," he said, his voice hoarse but filled with relief. "For now." Velar stood still, trying to steady her breathing, trying to understand the whirlwind of emotions that was spiraling inside her. She had feared for her life, feared for Drennan's life. But now, there was something else, the overwhelming weight of their shared connection. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Velar asked, her voice soft but filled with the rawness of everything she had learned in the past few hours. "Why didn't you tell me about your past, Drennan? Why did you keep me in the dark?" Drennan's shoulders sagged, and he closed his eyes for a moment as if gathering the strength to face the storm within him. When he spoke, his voice was low and filled with the weight of regret. "I didn't want to hurt you, Velar. I didn't want you to be dragged into this fight. I thought if I kept my distance, if I kept you safe from the truth, you wouldn't have to carry the burden of what I've done. What I have to do." Velar stepped closer to him, her eyes locking onto his. "Drennan, I'm not afraid of the truth. I'm not afraid of you. I'm here with you. Always." His eyes softened, and for a brief moment, the hardness in his features melted away. He reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek, as if touching her grounded him. "You're not just a princess, Velar. You're the heart of this alliance. Without you, there is no peace. But I can't protect you if you don't trust me, if you don't understand what's at stake." Velar's breath caught in her throat. She had never understood the true depth of her role, the weight of her responsibilities, until this moment. But now, standing here with Drennan, She realized that their fates were bound together in a way that she couldn't have imagined before. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them, together. "I trust you," Veela said, her voice steady. "And I'll fight by your side. I won't run from this. I won't run from you." Drennan's gaze softened, and a flicker of something, a mixture of hope and gratitude, shone in his eyes. "Then we fight together," he said, his voice filled with determination. "We'll protect the future of both our worlds. And we'll protect each other." As the darkness of the room enveloped them, the world outside seemed to hold its breath. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, Veela felt the power of their connection, stronger than any enemy, more enduring than any threat. The night stretched on, the weight of the world pressing heavily on their shoulders. They were safe, at least for now, hiding in the dimly lit safe house that had become their temporary refuge. But even in the quiet of the room, Veela could feel the tension lingering in the air. The rogue factions were closing in. The war that Drennan had fought in the shadows for so long was no longer something she could ignore. She sat across from him, her gaze never leaving his face. His eyes were filled with a deep weariness that spoke of battles fought not just with weapons but with his own heart. The truth he had revealed to her, his identity as Drennan, the mysterious hero, had shattered everything she thought she knew about him, but in a way, it had brought them closer. She could see now that his stoic demeanor, the distance he had kept, were all signs of his struggle. The fight he fought wasn't just for Earth or Zinthra, it was for the future. For the future of their alliance, for the future of their love. Drennan sat with his back against the wall, his arms crossed, his expression hard and unreadable. But she knew him better now. She could see the flickers of emotion beneath his calm exterior, the guilt, the regret, and above all, the love he had tried to bury. He had pushed her away for so long, kept her at a distance to protect her. But now, in this moment, in this quiet, there was no hiding. There was only truth. "I don't know what comes next," Drennan said, his voice hoarse. "The fight isn't over. We can't stay here forever." Veela nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of the battle ahead. "I understand. But I'm not afraid anymore, Drennan. I won't hide from this." He looked at her, his eyes softening for a brief moment. "I don't want you to get hurt. You're not just a princess to me, Veela. You're everything." Veela stood and walked over to him, her hand reaching out to gently rest on his. "You don't have to protect me from this. We're in this together. I want to help you, Drennan. Whatever it takes, I'm by your side." Drennan's gaze flickered to their hands, the simple contact sending a rush of warmth through him. There was something undeniable in the way she stood before him now, no longer the princess in need of saving, but the woman who had chosen to fight beside him, to share in the weight of their shared destiny. "You don't know what you're saying," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This fight, it's dangerous. It's more than just the factions. It's about power, control, and the future of both our worlds. If you come with me, there's no turning back." Veela took a deep breath, her gaze never wavering from his. "I know exactly what I'm saying. I'm not afraid of what's to come, Drennan. I'm not afraid of the unknown. I trust you, and I trust us. We're stronger together." For a long moment, Drennan said nothing, his heart battling with the fierce protectiveness that had driven him to keep Veela at a distance. But as he looked into her eyes, into the depths of her trust, her resolve, he realized something that had been missing from his life for so long. She wasn't just his ally. She was his equal, his partner, and he couldn't push her away anymore. "You're right," he said, finally breaking the silence. "We're stronger together." The weight of his words hung in the air, and in that moment, Veela knew that whatever the future held, they would face it side by side. No more secrets. No more lies. The bond between them had been forged in the heat of battle, and nothing, nothing at all, could break it. Outside, the sounds of the city had quieted, but Veela could still hear the distant hum of unrest. The war was coming, and the enemies were getting closer. But this time, she wasn't alone. She had Drennan by her side, and together they would fight for everything they believed in. The end.